Welcome back. It's us again. It's the boys from Fourth and Out. I'm Chris. He's Scott. And we are here to rebook the NFL quarterbacks for the 2023 season. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, go away and check out how we booked our 16 AFC quarterbacks. Scott had Bryce Young going to the Texans. He also had Bryce Young going to the Colts. We had interesting choices for Jimmy G. Scott had him at the Titans. I have Jimmy going to the Raiders, and plenty more good picks are still to come because now we head for the NFC. There's some really interesting moves to come in this conference. That's what it would be called. Of course, most so being the man I wear on my chest as we speak. Tom Brady is officially done at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think as well that I read this thing that says that he's done. He's the Buccaneers are going to take the cap hit of paying out the rest of his contract. So it's not like one of those situations where if someone retires, then they'd have to pay the Buccaneers to get him to unretire. I think at the end of March, he's officially not signed to anything. But I mean, Tom Brady's not coming back, guys. I am more sad about it than anyone else. But we shall start with the NFC East, and then we're going to work our way north, south, and west, ending on one of the most exciting divisions heading into 2023. But we ended the AFC one talking about the Super Bowl champions. Let's start our NFC one by starting with the Super Bowl runners-up. Talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. In their second year under Nick Sirianni, they only went and won the entire NFC under Jalen Hurts. He played in 18 regular season games, going 16-2. And in the middle of the season when he got hurt, Gardner Minshew came in, played respectably, but didn't win either of his two games. So, Scott, talk to me about the Eagles' third season under Sirianni.
Well, I've got a few things to say. If there's any justice in the world, we'll get this match again next year. The Eagles were the best team in the NFL this year, without a shadow of a doubt. The most exciting team, the most dynamic on offense. The defense was great as well. Sirianni is a dog. He is my favorite coach outside of Harbaugh. I just love him. He's great. And Jalen Hurts is a guy too. Let's make sure that Jalen gets paid at the end of this year. This team's great. You don't really need to rip up anything. They have lost both their coordinators, so we'll see how that affects things. But I'm pretty confident that Sirianni is the magic behind all this. He should have won Coach of the Year. It's disgusting that Daboll won Coach of the Year. Boo. But yeah, I think that the Eagles are going to hopefully repeat performance, get very, very far at least. I think that Hurts is fine. Minshew is a free agent. I don't know if he's worth paying the money to bring back in because ultimately they played him 2 games and he didn't win either. So maybe he's not worth paying exceptional money for a backup. And I think he will probably be one of the more requested backups in the league this offseason. So yeah, I don't really think there's much more to say. Let's go Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Eagles fans had sort of seen the 2022 season coming for a little while. Just the moment that Jalen Hurts just came out on the big stage. He had a career year in starts, first of all, but also completion percentage, passing yards, passing touchdowns, passer rating, rushing touchdowns. I don't think there was very much more that he himself could have done to win the Super Bowl. I think he pretty much did everything that he could have done. And of course, it came down to that last second field goal for the Chiefs to win it. I read recently that Howie Roseman is looking to extend Jalen Hurts' contract this season. So I really think this should be the time that they put him in the conversation to be the highest paid quarterback in the league, which I don't think is an overstatement to say. Right, so there's a couple of quarterbacks here that I don't think will be moving around too much. And let's go to the Dallas Cowboys in their fourth year under former Packers head coach Mike McCarthy. He had Dak Prescott last year, who went 9-5 in 14 games. And then Cooper Rush, man, coming in for 5 games and winning 4 of them has to be one of the more respectable backup quarterback performances. Dak Prescott is on the hook for 49.1 million in 2023. That's the second highest in the league. So I personally don't think he's going anywhere, obviously. I love him, and I genuinely feel like he's getting closer every year. I think this season, despite the numbers, I think he might have looked the best I've ever seen him play, especially with that really iconic win that he had over the Eagles in the middle of the season, albeit that was without Jalen Hurts at the time. They were playing with Gardner Minshew. Cowboys are like one of my teams. I think they're like maybe my third favorite team after Steelers and the 49ers. So I think get Dak healthy, get him back, get him some decent wide receivers, and I think you'll see results in 2023.
Yeah, I think that the Cowboys are somewhat of an anomaly. Obviously, they've kind of ruled the roost of this division for a long time, so they probably got a bit of a scare when the Eagles came out of the bats this year, and the Giants too, and the Commanders. To be fair, nobody did badly in this division when this was supposed to be the dud division of football. I think that the interesting thing with the Cowboys is every year we see it, be it fans or pundits talking about Dak in negative light and just saying that he's not good enough. And I'm a massive fan of Dak Prescott, and I do think he's the guy, and I think that he does deserve to have his name up in lights. So I just think give him more support, as you say, and I don't know if McCarthy's the problem. And maybe if I was Jerry Jones, I'd be paying attention to McCarthy at the first half of this season and really taking a look at what the football is like. I just can't understand why the Cowboys never seem to go that far. Doesn't make any sense to me. But all I know is that Dak's not the problem. I can see that from watching them that Dak is not the problem. So my question is, do the Cowboys know that?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. It does seem to be this weird anomaly that they just can't go that far. I think the chat that I heard through the season is that they've not been to the title game, like the NFC title game, since 1995 when they last won the Super Bowl, which is just it's crazy if you think that in that time they would have had Bledsoe, Romo, and Prescott. Like it's insane that those three haven't managed to really do it. But nevertheless, I have high hopes, as I do every year, that will most likely be dashed when Dak breaks another body part
Another leg, yeah.
in the middle of the season. Two slightly more interesting teams in terms of what they could do. Still to come. New York Giants, second season under Coach of the Year, Brian Daboll. I agree. Absolutely should have been Sirianni. Did Sirianni win it the year before?
No, he went like 9 wins the year before.
He definitely should have won it. But yes, Brian Daboll had Daniel Jones for 18 games this season or this past season, who went 10. No, wait, that doesn't. Yeah, sorry, 10, 7, and 1 in his 18 starts. And he also had Davis Webb in for a game which he lost during the season. Tyrod Taylor got some snaps as well. I think that Daniel Jones, I don't think this can be disputed really. He had his best season by far as a NFL quarterback. He played in the most games. He had the most wins, most completions, best completion percentage, highest passer rating, most yards, fewest interceptions. He led the Giants to their first playoff win in 11 years. This is absolutely mental. The Giants GM has already said they are planning on re-signing Daniel Jones. I think he gets a long-term contract with the Giants before the start of the season, and then Saquon Barkley gets the franchise tag. I don't think that Daniel Jones will get huge money, but I think he should get decent money, and I think he will start a significant chunk of next season's games unless he gets injured.
I controversially do not think that Daniel Jones is good enough still. I know he had 10 wins last year. And I know that Daboll's clearly good. There's no doubt about that. This team were quite exciting last year. But if you say that you don't think Daniel Jones will get huge money, but this is the current market we're talking about. Whatever he does get is still going to hurt the team by quite some bit. I don't think he's good enough to be worth paying to hurt the cap space a lot, especially when you're looking at having to move mountains to bring back Saquon Barkley, who in my eyes is better. I think that having Saquon on the team is better than having Jones. I think you could easily go into the quarterback uh, free agency window or even draft a rookie, bring them in and do something better than you're going to get by paying Daniel Jones. Um, I don't know. I maybe need another year of Daniel Jones doing what he did for me to come round, but unfortunately, this is just now fallen at this sort of time that someone's going to have to pay him. He probably will be a starter next year. It probably will be for the Giants, but if it was me and I was the Giants, I wouldn't be as enthusiastic about bringing him back as the GM is. I think they will stick with him though, and that is the point of what we're doing here. So it probably will be him. I just think like the guys that I've talked about that should be moved on, like Carr, Tannehill, they're better. They're not great. They're better. So why not give Tannehill a prove it deal here? Why not give Derek Carr a prove it deal here? That's what I'd probably look to do, and then bring Saquon back and pay him good money to come back. Also, interestingly, Tyrod Taylor is another name for those that listened to the previous episode. Another name that deserves a run in the Chiefs to get his ring, along with Teddy Bridgewater and Jacoby Brissett. Let's make sure that Tyrod gets a ring. So yeah, for me with the Giants, it will be Daniel Jones, but I'm not as convinced as you that it should be.
I like what you're saying about Ryan Tannehill because I think that his best seasons were when what's his face? Running back.
Henry.
Yeah, I just completely forgot who Derrick Henry was there. His best seasons came when Derrick Henry was at his most monstrous, and Giants have a really good running back that has woken up in the last 12 months. So that would really play into Tannehill's strengths. So it's a really good shout. I think this one's the most interesting one in this division. The Commanders in Washington under Ron Rivera, who's in his fourth season, have a whole host of potential things that they could do in 2023. Last season, they had Taylor Heineke for 9 games, who went 5-3-1 in that spell. They also had Carson Wentz come in for 7 games. He was 2-5. And then they had Sam Howell play a game, which he won as well. So you've got almost flashes of great stuff about 3 different quarterbacks, but you've also got flashes of horrific stuff from 3 different quarterbacks. For me, I think there's just something about Taylor Heineke that I've always really liked, and I really want the team to stick by him, even though he's obviously failed at times. But I think the thing with last season was there was always this kind of thing hanging over Heineke that he was only there until Carson Wentz got healthy. And then when Wentz did come in, he was absolutely garbage and won 2 of his 7 games. I think that if you take Heineke's numbers, so he played exactly half a season. If he'd have played a whole season, he would have gone 10-6-2, which, is not astronomical, but I think is decent. I think that he's playoff worthy. He had that amazing game against Brady and the Buccaneers a couple of years ago, which was really fun to watch. He's just always shown flashes for me. I just think he needs a decent supporting cast to go along with it. So I would like the Commanders to stick with Heineke. However, I think that if they do that, I think we'll know one way or the other about 4 games in to the season if he's any good.
I agree about Heineke. I'm such a Taylor Heineke fan. But I don't know if his future lies with Washington. He is obviously a free agent now. I don't think that he would cost a lot of money for a team to bring in. So I hope that we get a world where Taylor Heineke gets brought in as a starting quarterback somewhere. Give him the Mitch Trubisky job of guarding a team that drafts a rookie. Put him on the Colts. Put Taylor Heineke in the Colts or put him in at Houston and give him 5-6 games. And I guarantee he wins about 4 or 5 of them. I love the kid, man. I love him. Carson, on the other hand, is going to be, difficult to move on from. But I don't think that Carson or Taylor start. I've been watching bits of Taylor Heineke, and he said that Sam Howell looks the real deal. And of course, I don't know if this is breaking news for you, Chris, but Washington have just signed or are signing Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, which is insane, by the way, that he would want to take that move to me. But this is the guy who's, taken Pat Mahomes into the stratosphere. This is one of the guys who has been lauded for head coaching jobs all over the NFL. You've got a rookie quarterback who came in for one game and won it alongside, and he's been spoken of very, very highly, alongside potentially the best offensive coordinator in football. Washington might kind of get good next year. But it certainly won't be with Wentz. And I'm not sure if they'll re-sign Heineke. Week 1, they're starting Sam Howell. That's what I'm predicting.
That's exciting, actually. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think the enemy had to do something to sort of prove himself, because I think that was a lot of the chat, was that he'd been interviewing for head coaching jobs for like the last 3 seasons, and every single time he'd always get passed over for something else. And I feel like the reason he left the Chiefs was, one, he'd kind of done it. He'd done everything. He'd won the Super Bowl twice, but also he needed a job where he was the actual offensive coordinator. Whereas in Kansas City, Reed was the guy picking all the plays. So he needed to go somewhere where he had more of a control over the offense itself, which I like. I like that kind of lateral move, and plenty of guys have made this exact move that has then led them on to a head coaching job. So we could see this really work out for Bieniemy, and one of those 3 guys, most likely Heineke or Howell. So exciting to see. Let's go now to the north, which has some really interesting potential moves in it. Lots of older quarterbacks, it could be said, but not the case in Chicago, where the Bears are heading into their second year with Matt Eberflus. They had Justin Fields for 15 games last year. However, you only managed to go 3-12 in those games. Trevor Siemian and Nathan Peterman both came in for a game each, which they both lost. Tim Boyle played a couple of snaps as well. Scott, this is an interesting one. What do you think is going to happen here?
I have a very, very simple thought process behind this, which is that QB is not the problem here. Literally everything else is. So Justin Fields, I think last season showed me so much that I'm going to sound insane, but honestly, I saw more from him than I saw from Kenny Pickett, and Kenny had 7 wins. So I just think Fields looks really flashy, looks really exciting, tried his goddamn hardest, but he's got no offense. The team has no defense, no coaching, nothing. It is just Justin Fields. So stick by the guy, see if we can get better this year, and pray that it doesn't come to the point where Fields is like, God, get me out of here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think last year, in terms of quarterbacks, was there a person who was more let down by their supporting cast? I think it's like Justin Fields and Justin Herbert, like one of those two. Fields has all the tools to be a top tier quarterback, and he's desperately trying to show them. The amount of times last season where it just looked like he was just like, I'll do everything, leave it all to me, and they would lose the game.
Well, he got close to Lamar's running record.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's right. He just doesn't have the personnel. I think he needs a decent wide receiver, a decent running back, just overhaul the whole thing, bring in more offensive linemen. You have to really put your pieces in around Fields, because they've already spent a lot on Fields. You know, he was an early round draft pick and stuff like that. So this has to be the time for him. Hopefully this season, they might not be massive contenders this season, but I think I could see them going like 10 wins.
Yeah, well, they're gonna go D-line in the draft with the number 1 pick, which, as I said in the last episode, they might move slightly back with, but it's going to be a D-line player, like a leader on the defense, which they do need as well. But I don't know how many picks the Bears have, but you know what? Trading back is not the worst idea if they can pick up an extra couple and just try and get another couple of dudes in. Because as you say, they need to rip up almost everything else here.
The interesting thing is, surely they can fall to like 6 and they still have all the non-quarterbacks available, like every one of them.
Yeah, there's 2 blue chip dudes. One of them is Jalen Carter from Georgia, who's a D lineman. The other one is an edge called Will Anderson Jr. These two dudes are like day one starters, like, really, really exciting players. It will just depend on how desperate the quarterback needy teams are to draft up.
Let's head for Detroit. Dan Campbell in his third year with the Lions. He had Jared Goff for 17 games last year, where Jared went 9-8, coming dangerously close to the playoffs in the final game. I can't remember who it was. Was it the Seahawks won?
Seahawks, yeah.
Yeah, to put the Lions out. Nate Sudfeld was also in for a couple of snaps last season as well. Jared Goff's on the hook this year for $31 million, which is in the top 10 of the NFL this year. I personally, do you remember way back when 2 years ago, I gave the whole example of like the Butterfree Raticate trade on the SSN between Stafford and Goff. I still think that Detroit, having seen what Stafford done immediately after he left, I still think they should have stuck with him. But it was great to see in the tail end of last season, Jared Goff like sort of coming out of his shell a little bit. I thought that they became like a sneaky good team at one point in the kind of middle to late end of last season. And I think another year under Dan Campbell could be really good for Goff. I think like Campbell seems like a really good coach. He's got a good brain on him, and it'll be great to see how they coach Jared Goff in 2023. So I think stick by him. I think he'll do even better. I think he could easily finish. I think they could be genuinely in contention to win this division.
Well, MCDC, Motor City Dan Campbell, and the Detroit Lions are phenomenal. I found them really, really exciting last year. And I think what you said about Goff and his money, if you were a team that was looking to move off Goff, that would be a problem. But I don't think the Lions are a team looking to move off Goff. I think they're quite happy to run with Goff for another year. And I would be quite happy if I was a fan to run with Goff for another year. Listen, this is a guy who came into the league in a very, as a really exciting young prospect. And I think he's got a lot of legs left. He might have a full career resurgence. I think last year he could have been down as one of the players up for comeback player of the year, potentially. He certainly should have been in the shortlist. I think that you don't rip that up. You just roll with Goff for 18 weeks. You don't think about drafting a rookie at all. The Lions, I think, have 2 first-round picks this year. And they should spend both them on just other sort of skill players, like D linemen, corners. You don't really even need wide receivers because you've got some really, really exciting wide receivers in St. Brown as well. You've got a really top running back in Swift. This is a good team. So I think you just sort of stay the course. Don't change much on the offense. Build that defense more so you can try and change some of those 8 losses to wins. And the Lions might be a sneaky playoff contention team this year.
I like it. I like it. We're on board here. Let's roll. Before we head to Wisconsin, let's go over to Minnesota. The Vikings are heading into their second year under Kevin O'Connell. They had Kirk Cousins last year, who finished very highly in rankings for quarterbacks. He won 13 of his 18 games. He's significantly on the hook this year. He's down for 36.3 million, which is the 6th highest in the NFL. He also finished top 10 in the league in completion percentage at 66.7. Here's my thoughts on Kirk Cousins. I love the guy. I've always enjoyed watching him. I think that even when he was a backup in Washington, like what, a decade now ago, I really liked the look of him. But Vikings are in this limbo where he's very good, but is he ever going to beat one of the top 5 quarterbacks? Is he ever going to beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl? Is he ever going to beat Josh Allen in the Super Bowl? Is he ever going to beat not Patrick Mahomes? Is he ever going to beat Jalen Hurts in the NFC title game? They've sort of got to this point where it's like, do we stick with them now, or do we go for something else and we'll miss what we've had? I think he might be on a bit of a shorter leash this year because I think they really want more from Kirk Cousins. However, is that down to him? Is that down to the supporting cast? I don't know. Kevin O'Connell as well, I've not been convinced by yet either. What do you think?
Wow, okay. I think Kevin O'Connell was probably the third best coach in the whole NFL last year, behind
Really?
Daboll and Sirianni, for sure. This is a
Ah,
team who have the Green Bay Packers in their division, and the Detroit Lions were nothing to sniff at either. And this is a team who, almost won the whole goddamn thing. There was many weeks last year where the Vikings were the best team in the whole NFL, and certainly one of the most exciting teams. The weeks that the Ravens weren't doing very well for me, between the Eagles and the Vikings, I was like, this is great. Football's awesome. So I enjoyed a lot of Vikings football last year. Justin Jefferson is, without a shadow of a doubt, the best wide receiver in the NFL. Nobody's close. And I think he has already been paid, so we're all good there on that front. They won't need to open up a bag this year for him. I think with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins, it's very interesting because I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with what you're saying about him potentially being the problem. I'm not as convinced that he's the problem in Minnesota as I am with like Carr being the problem in Vegas. However, if I were the Vikings, I'd maybe be looking at trying to just make things a bit neater with Kirk, because when he's great, he is as good as the names that you've mentioned. He can play against them, but he does have some moments where he looks a bit dodgy. And maybe that's bringing in someone who can challenge him, like a Taylor Heineke, or maybe that's bringing in a specific quarterback coach, like Bill O'Brien's obviously coming for Mac Jones in New England. So maybe it's just doing something that puts a bit more pressure on Kirk. I do think that there is the potential that they've hit their glass ceiling with Kirk in terms of how good he can be. But I don't think you think about moving on from him at all. I just think you try and figure out other ways you can make him slightly better. His supporting cast is potentially the best in the NFL. You've got an elite running back, an elite tight end that you've paid for this season in TJ Hawkinson that they brought in from Detroit. And you've got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne. This is a great offense. The defense, not so much, but I think if you're Minnesota, you just need to figure out how to turn more of those losses to wins. And maybe it's spending your picks on defense, but maybe it's also bringing in a backup or a quarterback coach that can make Kirk just that little bit better. I think they're very close, but I don't know if they'll move across the line and become that little bit better. We'll see.
it's interesting. If you look back at the Vikings season, finished 13-4, like that was the season they had all those one-score wins. And see that if you look at the teams that they beat last year, they opened the season, they beat the Packers 23-7. But from then on, their wins were against the Lions, Saints, Bears, Dolphins, Cardinals, Commanders, Patriots, Jets, Colts, Giants, Bears. So they're not exactly the pure A-list of the NFL. They had a big win in week 10, which was a 33-30 overtime win against Buffalo to go 8-1 on the season. But then if you look at their losses, week 2 lost 24-7 to the Eagles. Week 11 lost 43 to the Cowboys. Week 14 lost 34-23 to the Lions. And then week 17 lost 41-17 to the Packers. It's like, I feel like their whole season, they could have been like 4-13 as opposed to 13-4. I feel like their season might have been like that Steelers season a couple of years ago where they went like 11-0, but actually the team was terrible. So I don't know. Like, I can't tell. Like, this team could drop way back this year, or they could do even better. They're just a wee bit all over the place to predict. Hopefully you're right, because I want them to be good. I don't want them to fail. They're not one of the teams that I want to fail. So we shall see what happens. Right, probably the most interesting one in this division. The Green Bay Packers under Matt LaFleur for the 5th season. They, of course, had the man Aaron Rodgers last season, coming off of his 2-time MVP back-to-back seasons. He went 8-9 in his 17 games, missed the playoffs. Jordan Love took a couple of snaps, but he's still not really got a sniff in yet. I'll go first here. Like, Rodgers is on hook for 31.6 million in 2023, which is top 10, but isn't loads in terms of dead cap space. I know the obvious answer is to cut their losses, trade him away, but I still don't think they've ever given Rodgers a situation where they've really stacked the team around him. I think that Aaron Jones and Aaron Jones and was it Devontae Adams? I think when they were both at the Packers, I think that was his best chance at greatness. And obviously, he's still not won a Super Bowl since back in 2010. But he's never had a first round receiver, and he's been in the league for about 40 years now. So I think that after he gets home from his darkness retreat, he should stay at the Packers. He should ball out. I still think he's the same player who won those back-to-back MVPs a year ago. I don't think the 8 and 9 season is a full reflection on Aaron Rodgers. I think he's better than those numbers, and I'm hoping that he'll prove that with the Packers in 2023. What do you think?
I think this is a 50-50 situation. I think there is a scenario where Rodgers comes from the darkness and just comes back and balls out. Listen, they balled out last year. It's just the first half of the season was a total write-off, and I think I put that down to Matt LaFleur. I don't think he's the guy. I don't think Rodgers thinks he's the guy, importantly. I really don't. I don't think Rodgers thinks he's the guy. I think that, A-Rod has a big decision on his hands. If he stays, then it's all fine. He will play, obviously. If he leaves, and I don't think enough people are talking about this, because a lot of people are focusing on, right, A-Rod, if he leaves, where will he go? Nobody's talking about if he leaves, what will the Packers do? I've not seen anywhere talk about that. Because for me, it's not just as simple as, okay, Jordan Love, come in. You're the answer. This kid has barely touched the football in the past 3 or 4 years. I wouldn't want him to be the guy. And if you want the Packers to remain contenders and what, to be honest, is a winnable division, but also might be quite a tricky division with the Lions and the Vikings marching on, then you need someone that's at least good. I don't know if Derek Carr might be the answer here. I could potentially see a flyer for Derek Carr come in. It could work. This could be a Jacoby Brissett spot. Bring Jacoby in and see if Jordan Love's got what it takes. If neither of them do it, and then you go back to the draft next year. I think maybe one of those kind of names would be good. But this is going to be a tough one because a lot of the offense are very young. And whoever does come in here, they're going to have to work really hard to get wins, I think. If Rodgers leaves, the Packers, I think, are in for a very tough year.
Yeah, you're right about Jordan Love. I always remember that when he was drafted for the 2020 season, he was the only rookie quarterback who didn't touch the ball even once. Every other rookie quarterback came in some capacity. 2021, he got a bit more of a look in, but this was like this was the COVID year when Rodgers, we found out Rodgers didn't want to be vaccinated.
Hey man, he was immunized.
Yeah, that was a good laugh, wasn't it? Came in, played in 6 games, started 1, didn't win it. Never really looked convincing at any point to me. 2022, he had snaps in 4 games. He threw 21 passes in 2022. We just don't have a sample size on this guy yet. So I think that even if they do want to go with him, they still have to pay Aaron Rodgers to stick around. Like, you have to play 6 games of terrible Aaron Rodgers football before you can actually jump on Love, I think. Because even if you play him every snap in 3 preseason games before this season, I still wouldn't be confident as a Packers fan going in with Love starting. So it's too little. They like he's literally started 1 game in 3 years.
Yeah. They could sneakily be one of the teams. There is another team to come as well, but they could sneakily be one of the teams that everyone is talking about. Houston, Colts, Carolina, Atlanta, these kind of teams for quarterbacks. And as I said in the last episode, there are 4 quarterbacks that are worthy of a first-round pick and worthy of maybe a day 1 start. Maybe Green Bay are one of the teams that sneakily look to trade up.
Right, let's head to the South, which is a very interesting division heading into 2023. I've got a couple of boxes here that were the last boxes that I filled out when we were preparing for this show because I just didn't have answers. Like, could not answer the question of what to do. So we'll start with the biggest vacancy in the NFL, the biggest loss in the NFL heading into this season is the loss of Tom Brady from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he's officially done, as we said in the last or the start of this episode. He won 8 of his 18 games this year and got to the playoffs, but did very little once they got there. Where did Tampa Bay go in 2023, Scott? I'll let you start.
This whole division is tough. I think it is the worst division in football by far. And the reason I say that is not only does it have 4 bad quarterback rooms at the moment, not one of them have any hope. There is no hope. With Green Bay, you could maybe put Jordan Love in and he turns out to be a monster. None of these teams have a Jordan Love at all. They've got nothing. Nothing. Not one little thing. There's nobody in here for any of these 4 teams that is in any shape or form going to be an NFL quarterback. It's terrifying. But that means that whoever decides to bring someone in wins the division straight away, I guess. With Tampa, I guess they've got the best team out of the 4. If we're looking at like non-quarterback, like the actual rest of the team. If you are a quarterback and you land in this division, you probably take that job. But then you are following on from Brady, which is maybe terrifying as well. This is why I honestly think that there's a lot of guys that we're talking about, like Brissett, Heineke, that we kind of like, that could maybe get starting gigs in this division. With Tampa, I think I have an idea.
Oh, I hope you're not going to steal
my idea. Is take them. No, I'm not, because you've already used them. You've put them somewhere in the AFC, but I didn't. If I'm Tampa, I'm flying a modest pot of cash towards Baker Mayfield. And I bring Baker Mayfield in to this team, confident that at the very least, I've made the playoffs.
I quite like that because, like, Baker Mayfield's the type of guy that even if he isn't, he thinks he's amazing, right? And if he goes to a team with a great supporting cast, like he did with the Rams, he'd be like, yeah, I can win with this team. Like, look at me. Like, and that's a really good shout. That could be a really fun booking if that's the way it goes. Can I tell you my thoughts? I think you'll like this.
Go for it.
So, as we know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers must be absolutely shiting themselves, right? Because there's no Brady and no one behind him has started a game. Blaine Gabbert used to be my least favorite quarterback in the NFL. Anytime he would play for the Jaguars 10 years ago, I'd absolutely just be like, get this guy at the NFL, get any other player from any team to start for the Jags and he'd be better. I remember going to watch the 49ers play the Jags in London and they absolutely humped them and it was amazing. I was just like, Blaine Gabbert, you're shit. Kyle Trask behind him as well has not really done anything. So they need to do some dealing. Here's my deal. Go and get a quarterback that's not too far away, a quarterback who played the Buccaneers twice last season, head to Carolina and bring in Sam Darnold. Here, let me tell you my thought process. Todd Bowles, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was the head coach of the Jets when Sam Darnold was brought in. Now, regardless of this, Todd Bowles did lose his job at the end of that season. So that it's not a foolproof plan. I just think reunite Bowles and Darnold. Sam Darnold last season won 4 of his 6 games, which is actually a very good sample size if you think about it. All the other quarterbacks in the NFC South, the quarterback, if you take out Brady, who's retired, the one that won the most games was Darnold. Sorry, not Darnold, Dalton at 6 games. So he's only 2 games behind the best quarterback left in the division. So I say bring in Sam Darnold, get him to compete in a room of Darnold, Gabbert, and a rookie quarterback. Get all three of those to battle out in training camp, and I think something good will come of it.
Okay.
Is that mental?
Yep. But I think you have to go mental for this situation.
Absolutely. I'll let you pick next. Where of the other three teams would you like to go? Because I feel like nobody knows what is happening at any of them.
Yeah, let's do Atlanta. So I think Atlanta are interesting. Obviously, Mariota hits free agency this year, I believe.
Does he?
If I'm right.
You might be. I'm going to look
Maybe he
that up.
doesn't. As far as I was aware, he was. But if he doesn't, then I also
Uh,
think that they.
oh no, he is officially signed for 2023. He's in the second of a 2-year, $18.75 million deal he had. So his dead cap this season is only 2.5 million. So quite easy cut if they wanted to.
But I believe that when they brought Ridder in, did he not? Did he not like effectively leave the team?
I don't know if it was quite that. There definitely seemed to during the season at the Atlanta Falcons to be a conscious shift, like from Mariota to Desmond Ritter. Like uh, it does feel like Mariota might not be coming back, but he's
Yeah.
officially signed right now.
Well, if I were the Falcons, I would bring him back. I think that, as we've just discussed, you don't really need to have a lot of tools in this division. And I think Mariota did an okay job. 5 wins is nothing to sniff at all. Considering that this team do not have a good offense to pair with a quarterback. Calvin Ridley was suspended and then traded immediately. So it's not a good team. I think what the Falcons need to do is they need to look at drafting a good couple of weapons in this draft, and pair it up with, I would say, the same quarterback room. Bring Mariota back and give both him and Ridder a fair shout at the job. I did not see enough from Ridder to make me believe he's the guy. I think Mariota could probably do enough to win this division if the other three teams are as they currently are. So I would keep the same quarterback room here. I also pray that Lamar Jackson does not come in, because Atlanta are kind of the team that is sort of linked with a trade most. We'll see what happens. I don't think much of the coaching. I don't think much of the team. But if it was me, I'd keep the same quarterback room.
I feel bad for Mariota because he got the spotlight this year for the first time in quite a while, and it just didn't work out for him going 5-8. I think that both Mariota and Ridder do both stay at the team for 2023, but I do think there's a change in the depth chart. I think Desmond will win out the job in Atlanta by the end of preseason, and he'll start with Mariota on the bench or hopefully not gone. I think he's good enough to be a backup quarterback, and I think that the Falcons have spent a lot of time and money on him already, so I think they should keep him around. Right, let's go to the New Orleans Saints, who are looking at their second year under Dennis Allen. I couldn't tell you what Dennis Allen even looked like. I don't think he was even on my radar at all in 2022, but he scraped 6 wins out of Andy Dalton from his 14 games, and Jameis Winston even played 3 games as well, managing to earn a win as well. Scott, what do you think is going to happen with the Saints this year? This division's so confusing.
I really feel for the Saints. Like, you probably had the worst breakup of any team ever. The Bucks must be terrified that they're going to fall into the same sort of path that the Saints have. I don't think anything of Dennis Allen. I don't think Dalton or Winston did anything to stake a claim at retaining their jobs or retaining a starting position in any team. I think that the Saints are a quarterback needy team that doesn't really realize it is one. So I'd be looking at the draft here for them. I think that they are another team that could sneakily, if they were smart, they would sneakily move up. If they had a better coach, I would say that this is a decent Carr or Tannehill kind of landing spot. But I just, again, don't really believe in the coaching there. And the rest of the market's not really there. Jacoby Brissett, maybe, but then you might just be bringing in another Andy Dalton with that move. I just don't think that there's much out there for them. So I think in their current market, I'd be looking at the draft. Keep one of Dalton or Jameis. I think Jameis is still contracted. Dalton's a free agent. So keep Jameis, start in week one, let a rookie sit under him for the first couple of weeks, and then start the rookie. It's bad times for the Saints, though.
I agree with you. I think with all the dominoes that are falling, I actually went with stick with Andy Dalton, like 6-8 from 14 games. I think Dalton might be the best slice of the cake that is left for them in terms of free agency. I do agree. I think they'll draft a quarterback because they desperately need one. I don't think I watched a couple of Dalton games last year. I don't think he looked terrible.
I did.
He wasn't great. He was top 10 in completion percentage for the year. He had his best statistical, in terms of completion percentage and passer rating. He had his best season as well. It's difficult to extrapolate because it's only 14 games. So yeah, I would keep Dalton, bump Winston, but then I don't know, because Winston is the one under contract. But definitely I think they will be drafting, and that drafted quarterback will probably be starting by weeks 4 to 7. We have one last team in this division, which I think is very interesting because Carolina Panthers, their first year under Frank Reich, and they had the biggest quarterback room in 2022. Let me take you through it. They were the only team in the NFL to have 3 players start 5 games or more. Sam Darnold played 6 games, won 4 of them. Baker Mayfield played 6 games, won 1 of them. PJ Walker played 5 games, won 2 of them. Jacob Easton came in for a couple of snaps as well. Scott, before I let you come in, can I take you through my thought process on this? As I said, I stared at this box for ages trying to figure out who starts here. I went through every name on every depth chart and every team. I went through every quarterback who played a snap in 2022, and I couldn't find the answer. And then I realized the answer isn't there. The answer isn't in a quarterback who played in 2022. The answer isn't in a quarterback who played or who has signed up for the 2023 draft. The answer is in a man who's been sitting on that bench fixing his list, Frank, for the last 12 months. The answer is Matt Corral. Get him in, my guy. He's watched the team. He's been getting healthy for the last 12 months. He's used his time to learn how the team operates. The team have chucked their GM. They've chucked their coach. They've chucked just about everyone else. It'll be him versus a draft rookie for the starting gig. And I think that Corral wins it because he's a rookie in the playing sense, but in his mind, he'll have spent 12 months learning the team. Now, I know that's mental because I've got nothing to go on. This is the closest you will get me, Scott, to picking a rookie quarterback to start this season. But I've got like a rookie plus 1 quarterback starting for the Panthers.
Okay. I think that I couldn't believe when I saw that Carolina had hired Frank Reich after the job he did with the Colts. This Carolina under Reich might be the worst Reich since the third Reich. This is just going to be terrible. I just don't think this is going to be in any shape or form good. This is most certainly a quarterback needy team. I think
maybe one that's blonde.
I think that Matt Corral is potentially a good shout, but I also think that they bring back Darnold. I oddly enough think what you said about Andy Dalton is how I feel about Darnold. He's probably the best slice of cake that they get, and they don't deserve any cake, the Panthers, because they're fucking shit, and they are just the most nothing team in the NFL. If I were them, I wouldn't draft a QB. I'd give Corral a year, because why wouldn't you? You spent the early second round pick on him last year, but they're just dumb. The Panthers are just dumb, so I can see them drafting. But if it was me, Matt Corral week 1 as well, with Darnold behind them.
I always remember when they went to the Super Bowl, and after that, they were like, "Nah, we need to get off Cam Newton. He can't do it for us." And they've not had a player since. They've just, like, it's been It's been 8 years this year, Scott, since the Super Bowl that Carolina Panthers were in, and they've still not found an answer. In that time, D'Amico Ryans has got all his coaching badges. He's been in school every night, and he's now a head coach in the NFL, and they still can't find a quarterback. Absolutely mental. But yeah, the fire that is the South, that is the last word we'll have on it for a while, because the most interesting division heading in to 2023 has to be the NFC West. Lots of movement going on. All 4 quarterbacks could potentially change this season. I mean that genuinely. All 4, between retirement, free agency, injury, being dead wee and a little bit shite. Like, there's a lot of changes that could happen in this division. So where would you like to start, Scott?
We'll just let's go the Rams. I think for me the Rams are the easiest one to go with. I want a comeback year here. There's still lots of the team that won the Super Bowl on the books at the Rams. Not all of them, granted, but a lot of the team. Cooper Kupp unfortunately went down injured halfway through the season. That affected things quite badly. They were just pretty injury riddled. It was disappointing, but it was also unfortunate last season, I think. I still believe in Sean McVay. I still believe in Matt Stafford. I still believe in this team. I think they're great. It'll be tough because of all the mints that we've just gone through. It'll be tough to retain Baker Mayfield, but I think Matt Stafford's enough. I would potentially look at a later round rookie QB drafting, just to think about the future. But Stafford, I think, can do the whole of next year.
I'm with you 100%. Did you know that in terms of completion percentage, Matthew Stafford was the second best quarterback in the league last year at 68%. I couldn't believe that Stafford kept losing in 2022. He went 3-6 in 9 games. And then it came out that he was probably playing with like quite an injured back for a lot of that. I think he comes back, as you said, absolutely balls out. But the Rams need to stack around him. They need Cooper Kupp back healthy, and they need some other players as well. Baker was a fun cameo, but I think he will use the 4 games that he played for the Rams last year as like collateral to move somewhere else. He will think that he's a starter, as we've mentioned on both this episode and the last one. I think that John Wolford probably sticks around as a backup. He kind of knows the team. He was the one that won the game 2 years ago to send the Rams to the playoffs, I do believe. So I think they will stick with Wolford. Mayfield is gone. Not sure about Bryce Perkins, but Stafford on the comeback trail in 2023. Here's the interesting one. This one we will know sooner rather than later, because Matthew Stafford is on the hook for $62 million on the 3rd of March. We're recording on the 18th of February. So we'll know the answer to this very, very soon. They're either going to cut him in less than a month, which I think is very unlikely, or they will have their starting quarterback for 2023. Right, let's next go to the Arizona Cardinals. This year will be their first year under Jonathan Gannon. Last season, they had 4 different starting quarterbacks. Kyler Murray got the majority of the games, going 3-8 from 11 starts. Colt McCoy came in for 3 as well. He won a game. And then David Blau and Trace McSorley played 3 games between them, none of which they won. I think it will be, obviously, Kyler in 2023. He has a dead cap hit of $97.5 million this season. So we're getting it up there with dead cap territory with Deshaun Watson. His cap doesn't actually drop, his dead space cap doesn't actually drop below 50 million until 2025. So I think that they have to build around Murray, and they have to build around him immediately. I don't think, though, that it looks like he will start this season purely because of his injury. I don't think the timeline works out enough for him to be back for game 1. So I don't know what they do in terms of backup. There's nothing really that worthy on the Cards bench. 1 win from 3 different quarterbacks. So I think probably Colt McCoy has to open up the season unless they decide to go with one of the lower end guys that's a free agent. I'm going to chuck out Joe Flacco or Mason Rudolph, because it's the only 2 people from the top 15 that I've not booked elsewhere. But yeah, I think the more interesting story in Arizona is what the backup quarterback situation will be.
Well, I'll say this. I really don't like Kyler. I've sort of accepted it. I think he sucks. They paid a baseball player a bunch of money. Um, I just think I even when he is healthy, I don't think this team's going anywhere. I think they're going to suck again. And I think the team is slowly but surely starting to fall to bits. I don't believe Cliff Kingsbury was the problem there. And the new guy that they brought in, Jonathan Gannon, I think is going to have a job on his hands. So I think we could potentially be looking at this team finishing bottom of that division again, even when Kyler is healthy. There's a lot of chat about D-Hop walking as well. So I think there's potentially a rebuild on the cards here. Literally on the cards. I think week one, Colt McCoy, sure, they might as well. I also kind of like Trace McSorley. It's probably because he's ex-Ravens, but he could also potentially be a guy you start week one if he's still in the books. I couldn't see him on my free agency tracker, so maybe he is still in the books. But I just don't think it's going to be a good season for them.
That leaves us with two teams left, and undoubtedly we're going to end on the best conversation for next year, which is the San Francisco 49ers. But before we get to that, let's talk about one of the most feel-good stories in the NFL that came out from 2022. That is the 14th season of the Seattle Seahawks under Pete Carroll and new quarterback Geno Smith coming in from the wilderness for his first full season in 10 years or something like that. In 18 games, going 9-9, having the best completion percentage in the league at 69.9%. He was the only quarterback in the entire league who played every snap at quarterback for his team. Only quarterback, not Mahomes, not Hurts, not Allen, not Burrow, not Jackson, not any of them. Geno Smith was the only one, and I love him for that. Seahawks, in my opinion, need to do all they can to retain Geno Smith and get him under a contract again. He did more than enough, I think, in his 9 games, and I think he'll also only improve in 2023. I feel like they do obviously need to bring in someone young to have a go behind him, not Drew Lock, because I think he was nothing. He didn't take a single snap in 2022. And have Geno train them up, because, he's like the thing about training up a young quarterback behind you is it's almost the same as being a backup quarterback to someone younger before you. So he's the perfect man to come in and support some new young quarterback. The issue is, having won 9 games last season, I don't think Seattle are very high in the draft, are they? So
they actually are. They actually are. They because they've got a pick in the top 10. I can't remember.
Oh, they've got the Broncos. They've got the Broncos
yeah.
pick from Russ. Yeah, that actually makes sense. So I think they'll draft a quarterback to sit behind Geno at least for half the season, and preferably and probably for the majority of the season.
So my thinking with this is on the rookie. First of all, Drew Lock obviously hits free agency. There's no need to re-sign him. They could go a quarterback in the draft, but they won't go at round 1. And the reason is as I mentioned, there are 4 guys that are going to go round 1, right? All 4 of them are going to start week 1. There are enough desperate teams that the Seahawks can wait for a guy in the second or third or even in day 3 and sit him for a year and see how it turns out. I love your idea of bringing Geno back and getting him to train the next dude, like Alex Smith.
Yes.
This is exactly Alex Smith again. Because Alex Smith had that great year with the Chiefs, where Mahomes was sitting behind them, and then they did the transition, and
Both guys also won Comeback Player of the Year award.
Yeah. So for me, I think that you do need to go and get Geno. The problem will be is there are a lot of teams that need a quarterback, and if I'm Seattle, I don't know if I want to pay big money for Geno. I want to bring him in on a 2 or 3 year deal where he knows that he'll be the starter this year and he'll probably sit next year or the year after. So the trick for Seattle is going to be trying to see what they can do with regards to the deal here, because if there's bigger and better offers on the table from more desperate teams, then if you're Geno, what do you do? So I think that's going to be the key here is, can Seattle bring him back for a reasonable price?
Amazing. I'm excited to see what happens with Gino. I think he's given himself his best advert as a player, probably of his whole career. He didn't have this when he left his last two teams, so it's exciting for him. Well, Scott, we've come to the end of the road, and I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on this. I didn't actually write that much about what's going to happen at the San Francisco 49ers, but they definitely have 3 potential starters, all of whom could be not on the team next year, which is very, very exciting. It's their 7th year under Kyle Shanahan, who I think is personally one of the best coaches in the NFL. This is what the breakdown looked like last year. They started with Trey Lance. He played 2 games, won 1, lost 1, blew up his ACL, gone. Then comes Jimmy Garoppolo, in from the wilderness, the man that absolutely balled in 2022, played 10 games, won 7 of them, looked like he was going to take the team to the playoffs, injured, gone. In comes Brock Purdy, who saw this coming, played 8 games, won 7 of them, absolutely amazing season, only losing to an absolute humping in the playoffs by the Eagles when they had literally not a quarterback left. Josh Johnson, I think, was the guy that came in for snaps in that game. And yeah, it's such an interesting team to look at this season. Jimmy finished 67.2 completion percentage, which was 6th in the league, just missing out in the top 5. For me, I've already got Garoppolo going elsewhere. So I think the 49ers roll with Purdy and Lance, because I don't think either of them will play every game for the 49ers this season. I think Brock starts the season and Trey finishes. No, sorry, I've got that backwards. I think Trey starts the season and Brock finishes the season. They're also both not currently 100% because both got injured during the season, and both injuries will take them into next season to heal. So it's very up in the air. It's very up in the air what's going to happen.
I mean, the first thing I'll say is the situation that happened to them during the playoffs was super unfortunate, and everything I've seen from people that are in the league say that they're going to try and get that rule re-implicated where you can have an emergency backup quarterback. Because it was very unfortunate. Like, Purdy only really lost that game because he was injured. They could have gone on to win that game if he was healthy.
Purdy literally played with a torn elbow
Yeah.
and was just handing off the ball using his other hand for the majority of the game.
Yeah. I think the kid's got the dog in him. I think in terms of long term, he's the one. He's the one I want starting in that team. But in terms of how it looks next year, I just don't know. It's really tough to say. If it was me, in all honesty, I would try and trade Trey Lance and get some capital in for him. Because you're going to eventually have this headache of Purdy versus Lance. It's going to happen at some point. You won't have that headache with Jimmy G, in my opinion. So I would try and retain Jimmy G and probably keep Brock Purdy, start Jimmy G, but bring Purdy in over the next year with a look at basically starting eventually and trading Lance. But they won't do it. It's not going to be how it goes for a few reasons. The quarterback market there's a lot of teams that need a quarterback. Jimmy G being a free agent, he's going to cost too much money for the 49ers to bring back in and use them how I would use them. And they've got Trey Lance is a difficult player to move on from. You traded up and then picked him at number 2 or 3 initially. So you gave up a lot for Trey Lance. And whilst he hasn't given you a lot, you're also being quite harsh on him because he's not had the opportunity to give you a lot. So you kind of still have to give him that opportunity. I just think there is eventually going to be a headache between Purdy and Lance, and I just don't know who wins. But both of those players really are going to have to start in the NFL eventually, and you can't have 2 starting quarterbacks in the same team. So we shall see. I think it will be Purdy and Lance. I don't know who starts. But I also don't think it really matters because, as Kyle Shanahan's proven, he's gotten effectively a winning record out of almost 3 quarterbacks. I think you could bring anybody off the free agency in here and they would do really well. I just think it's a well-run team, lots of stud players on offense and defense. I think that the way that people felt about the Bills last year is how I feel here. I think that this is the team to beat next year.
That's really exciting. That's very exciting. And I love that you have the similar love for the 49ers that I do. I think that almost whatever happens, it'll work out for them. Touch wood that I haven't wrecked their season by saying that. But yes, that completes our set. We have booked the quarterbacks for all 32 teams across the NFL. I am very excited to see what happens next. And allow me to tell you, Scott, what is going to happen next. As I said, we are recording this on the 18th of February. On the 21st of February, at 4 p.m. New York time, is when clubs can officially start to designate franchise or transition tags. That means that we'll start to see some of those players getting tied down by franchise tags pretty quickly. Then the end of February is the start of the combine, and the deadline for the franchise and transition tags comes around quickly on the 7th of March. And then officially on the 15th of March is the first day of the new league season. It doesn't feel like it's the start of the season because it's so early in the year, but that day is important because that's when the 2022 contracts end and you start on your 2023 contracts. So there will be a lot of cuts made in the next, 28 days or something like that. Before you know it, it'll be draft time, preseason, and week 1 of the season. So it's an exciting time to be an NFL fan, Scott.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a really good year next year. I think there are 5, 6, 7 teams that could really you could stake a claim for getting to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And we'll leave it with that for now, that we have booked all of our stars and hopefully they all get good gigs in 2023. Stay with us. I'm sure we'll be back sometime around the draft to talk more about this. Probably Scott saying I told you so. Probably me saying, what do you mean Sam Darnold isn't going to the Buccaneers? But we'll know more about it very soon. But in the meantime, thank you, Scott, once again for all your brilliant sleuthing, especially on the draft, which I know nothing about.
All good.
We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, Muffins, play us out.